Welcome back to Crosstabs. I'm your host, Reagan Canope. Not currently with me is Brian Iverson, but he was in this episode. I'm recording a separate intro because we are trying a new podcast platform. However, we ran into some technical difficulties, and so far I have not been able to get the intro out of the online service where I recorded it. I was able to edit the episode and everything fine, but we had to do a separate take for the intro, and I still don't have it. It was hilarious. I will play it at some point if I ever get access to the file because it was very funny. But this is episode 19 of the podcast, and one of the things that's missing from the intro are one of our previous episodes, I think the most recent previous episode, we called Oregon's Trans Agenda, and Brian and I had both gotten texts about that. Everybody, uh, you know, either thinking the title was funny or thinking we were going to talk about transgender politics when really it was a play on transportation, which was one of the primary topics of that episode. So that's where we leave off when this episode starts. Thanks so much for listening to Crosstabs.
We're clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
Liked about the transportation or us having that conversation is I believe it's going to be an ongoing, conversation. And I was just actually having a cup of coffee with our mayor 5 times over here in Prineville, and he's on the regional transportation board. And we had a meeting with Meta, who is our data center here in Prineville, and they have 8 buildings and everything. And we were just kind of talking about transportation in general, and he's really laid it out in a very simple scenario in regards to, like, there's way more need than there is money, and there's way less dollars coming in. So what's the answer? And I think that's really going to be an interesting question over the course of the next 6 to 8 months as we move into session and everybody starts floating around this idea that we're living off of a transportation grid that was built in the 50s, that we have to somehow, build new roads and streets and bridges and all of the things. But man, is it expensive.
Dwight D. Eisenhower, right, created our interstate system, at least. I don't think he was the first one to have a bridge built. But I would say, Brian, one of the interesting compromise I haven't heard floated yet is there's the No More Freeways group that's suing to stop the Rose Quarter project, and I kind of think that's actually a decent idea. What we should do is just, for transportation funding, do no more transportation funding in the Portland metro area and do one transportation package where we just skip Portland, and then we just do it all outside. Because, Brian, some of these smaller cities, they get skipped for projects sometimes. Let's just skip all of Portland metro for one. And I think we'll get caught up in the rest of the state, and then Portland can decide if they want to build any more roads or if they just want to switch to walking, biking, and Mad Max vehicles. And then we can pick it back up in 7 to 10 years.
Dude, I'm all for the Mad Max vehicles. I got an Excursion. It's my ski vehicle, and it's my the one that we go up skiing. I can get 8 people in there. I got it jacked up. I got huge tires on it. All I need is a bumper with some big old spikes on the front, and we could totally Mad Max that thing. So I'm all for it. Going Mad Max vehicles. Yeah.
And Iverson coming out there just a little bit. So Brian, I was thinking we were actually just recording a test on a new podcast platform we're trying out. We're not going to say who they are until we actually decide if we like them. But and if you want to sponsor, get in touch. You might know who you are. But I thought it would be good if we did some news, a short news podcast, because we've got a special guest coming up later in the week. Clears more time for them to talk. So first thing, Brian, I wanted to talk to you about, we talked about ballot measures an episode ago, and one of them is the quote-unquote Oregon rebate. Yes, on Measure 118, they want to raise the corporate minimum tax on companies, regardless of if they're making a profit or not, redistribute it. Recently, legislative revenue and fiscal issued a new update to that. So like 6 years ago when they started working on this, it was going to give everyone $750 a year. Now it's $1,600 a year. And because of that, and because of a bunch of other issues with this, it's so much more money. All the Democrats came out against it. OEA came out against it. Governor Tina Kotek, we talked about, the top spokesperson for the No campaign, is against it. I wanted to read you a tweet from the Yes campaign responding to all this opposition. So the Oregonian tweets out, ballot measure to tax corporations and pay Oregonians $1,600 a year draws bipartisan opposition. The reply from the campaign: if Salem politicians have their own idea for giving all Oregonians a $1,600 tax break while cutting childhood poverty in half, we'd love to hear it, with kind of the laughing, crying emoji. These legislators have chosen to listen to Koch government relations instead of the 170,000 Oregonians who signed our petition. Any thoughts on that, Brian?
If you pay enough money, you can get 170,000 people to sign anything. When you sit out in front, and if you have people just accosting people and they just want to sign it just so they can get you in front of them, so get you away from them. I do find it interesting that they've moved it to $1,600 and they call it a tax break, when chances are that, I don't know, what's the percent of people that actually pay taxes in Oregon? And then, of course, cutting childhood poverty. So now they're assuming that if you get $1,600, that you're no longer going to be in poverty. I mean, it's just silly. These guys are just off the rockers, and it makes no sense whatsoever. And I hope people see through the ruse of this crap and just realize this is a bad idea. When I think the only people that haven't signed on to this, that's a legislator, that's a D or an R, is probably people that have been on vacation. So the fact that everybody is against this tells you how bad of an idea it is. Because usually Republicans and Democrats in Oregon, we don't have a history of agreeing on a lot of things. So the fact that you have both sides of the aisle agreeing that this is a bad idea really tells you it's probably a bad idea.
Nope, you're 100% right on that.
But wait, where's
so
Travis at?
What's that?
Where's Representative Nelson at? We should ask. Did he sign the letter?
I think it was just leadership that signed the letter, but I've seen a lot of other rank and file members tweet. So we'll keep it. What we should do is we should do what the journalists should be doing right now, which is checking in with each of the individual candidates. But so I'll text our journalist friends and find out if they're going to do their jobs on this or not. We could always check with all of them, send them an email. I think that would be fun. So we'll see. Another thing that journalists should be checking with legislators on that they won't. Oregonian reported that Washington County District Attorney Kevin Barton is in a disagreement with federal officials over Oregon's sanctuary promise law. He's trying to get 3 Washington County criminal defendants, 2 accused of child molestation, 1 of murder and kidnapping, brought back to the United States to stand trial. And the federal government wants to have them sign an assurance letter promising that they'll give ICE advance notice if any of those defendants are about to be released, because then ICE wants to go pick them up. And that's all that all makes sense to me, Brian. That's a good idea. That's good policy. If for some reason the state isn't able to hold them, ICE should want to know that a criminal illegal immigrant is being released. All normal stuff. Guess what's getting in the way? The sanctuary law, which, if you asked Democrats, probably wasn't. They probably wouldn't say it was designed to protect criminal illegals, but now that's what the law is doing. And so the question is are they going to fix it?
I doubt it. The expansion of this was House Bill 3265 in 2021. And one of the chief sponsors of this is Senator Gorsuch, who's up for re-election this year And I really hope that his feet are held to the fire on this one, as well as the rest of the Democrats who signed on to it, expanding this sanctuary status so that these people that are just heinous people, right? I mean, they're regardless of their status, they're bad people. Like that's. I don't even know if it shouldn't matter if somebody's an illegal alien or they're a citizen. If they're a bad person, they should be prosecuted. And I think that was kind of D.A. Barton's thought on this whole, right? If you're a bad guy, then you need to get prosecuted and thrown in jail.
Well, and to me, that's the thing. It's like, how hard are you going to work to make sure criminals don't get prosecuted? And that's the thing that I do not understand about the current Democratic Party is they always say, or at least they don't like when you attack them for being weak, soft on crime. But then all they do is vote for stuff and take actions for and allow their bureaucracies to do anything and everything to prevent criminals from being prosecuted. Another great example. Clackamas County is one of the counties that agreed to join this new deflection program that's part of Measure 110. So literally a program that's going to prevent people from being prosecuted. That's the goal of the deflection. It's to get them into treatment or whatever so that they don't end up in jail. Now, after so many times or whatever, depending on how it's built, each of the programs are a little bit different because they're letting the counties have some local control. Apparently, they didn't like Clackamas County's version of this local control, and they said, actually, you can't have a drug deflection program, which is funny to me because on the one hand, I think they're punishing them because they don't like how it's structured. It's too tough on crime. But guess what the alternative is going to be? They're just going to get prosecuted under the new not an A misdemeanor, right? It's a unclassified misdemeanor that was meant to make everybody's feelings feel better. Okay, great. Call it whatever you will. It's the teeth that were needed for the drug use to prevent people from using drugs without consequences. And now they've just decided they're bailing on it, but only for Washington County for some reason.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't really have. I mean, I think that there's so much bad stuff happening out there, and we need to give the money, the tools, the throw the kitchen sink at all of these problems and not just hide underneath a mattress and pretend it's not happening.
That specifically here, it's the Criminal Justice Commission. I'm looking at a Willamette Week article, Brian, and I'll put this in our little chat box here so you can see what I'm looking at. But they asked for a little under $1 million. Washington County got 1.3 for theirs. And the Criminal Justice Commission did not approve, but also did not say why they didn't approve money for Clackamas. And this is part of the problem with when you hand over all this power to unelected bureaucrats. The CJC is appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, sure, but because they're not forced to leave after their terms, they're there until they resign or Kotek, the current governor, whether it's Kotek or somebody else, fires them.
Well, and I don't know why, if I'm Clackamas County, I'd have been like, you know what, we don't need this. We're just going to send them to you guys over there in Multnomah and Washington County. How about that? We'll go ahead and pay for the bus tickets, and we'll just send them to your deflection program. You guys deal with it.
And that's true. I mean, I think that's a strategy. Lynn County, a great Lynn County conservative hero, our commissioners, sheriff, DA, all very, really solid people. They all said, we're going to take a pass on the deflection stuff. We're not sure that it really gets at what the issue is. And so I think it'll be a legitimate test. How does Lynn County fare versus some of these other similar sized counties that are going to do deflection? And I think it's great. I'm glad that they're doing that because it should have local control. It feels more like of a Lynn County decision to not participate. And we'll just, I think it's good for them putting it to the test and, proving different concept.
It is. The only thing, I mean, I do appreciate local control. In these sort of scenarios, though, I I mean, it's just so easy for somebody to go from one county to the next or this county, right? And if you don't have a deflection program in, say, Lynn County, what do you think that increases maybe like the homeless people wanting to go there, not go there? Like I'm wondering how it plays out in the homeless community or the drug community of does a county get, if you don't have a deflection program, do they shy away from that area versus a Multnomah County?
Yes, that, and I think Lynn County specifically, and you'll like this, Brian, but it may not everybody else will like this. In Lynn specifically, I think not having deflection probably means more drug users are going to go to Corvallis. And nobody in Albany probably thinks that's a bad thing. But I think in other parts of the state, you might be one that has a deflection program because you're a little bit bigger. Like I'm thinking of a rural county, like if they set up deflection in Pendleton, are people from surrounding cities all going to show up there just because they're bigger and they have more money and more staff so they can do a deflection program? Like that could be more negative versus, another drug user in Corvallis. Speaking though, Brian, of bus tickets to Corvallis to use drugs, San Francisco Standard reports that San Francisco, and the headline says plans to bus more homeless people out of town. Here's where they've already been sent. So San Francisco, since August of 2022, has sent 857 homeless people to other states and other counties in California. After California, Oregon is the second most popular destination, making up roughly 10% of the 92 clients in the program, according to data collected from when it launched. Then it's Nevada and Texas. So, Brian, you said your solution episodes back to homelessness was bus tickets. Guess who was listening? San Francisco.
Gavin Newsom, I think, was listening to us, Reagan. I think that because I'm telling you, I know we come off a little tongue-in-cheeky when we say bus tickets, but the reality is moving them along. And it's been that way even when we had, hobos back in the day, right? We used to call them hobos or whatever. A hobo was somebody looking for work that kept moving on, and a bum was somebody that was the same but wasn't looking for work. That was like what you called the two different people. But the reality, like, of hobos or the Vietnam vets back in the day, I think of like Rambo, right, where he comes walking into the town and the sheriff sees him and he's like, oh, here's this guy, like, hey, let me give you a ride to the bridge, and just say, oh, there's a diner up the road there, see you later. And basically saying you're not welcome here. That's kind of that's what they're doing. I mean, if they're putting people on a bus, they're saying, and who knows, of these people that they're putting on buses, like, are these like the worst of the worst homeless people? Like, who gets bus tickets and who doesn't? What if you don't want to go? Like, how does that, I find it truly fascinating in the idea of, one, San Francisco says, well, most of them are just going to other counties in California, which we were just talking about with the drug thing. Like, are the people just moving from county to county within Oregon? And then they're saying, well, now let's send them to Texas, let's send them to Oregon. And they go, hey, things are great up in Oregon. They got free crap up in Eugene. Let's send you there. Okay, I'll go there. And it's amazing that now all we're going to do is just shove homeless people around.
The Journey Home program, the article says, does not require clients to have a home where they're being sent, because I think, Brian, if they had a home, they may not be homeless. But they must prove some connection to the area, such as a previous address or something like that. So their goal is to send them home. My favorite thing about this, and I can already hear all the lefties screaming, well, didn't Ron DeSantis bus all of the illegals to blue states? Didn't Texas Governor Greg Abbott bus all the illegals to blue states? Isn't this just the response to that? And I see their point. I think that if we were going to go with the Journey Home program and use it with illegals, however, we would just be sending them back to their country of origin, which seems to be not something that Democrats want to do. So then the question becomes, if you don't want us to send them back across the border, if you don't want us to send them back to their home countries, why shouldn't they go to states that say that they are a sanctuary for people like this, as opposed to states where, Florida isn't a sanctuary state, Texas isn't a sanctuary state, Arizona isn't a sanctuary state, and Democrats talk about, because they're Republican-controlled states for the most part, they're horrible places to live. Why shouldn't we send them to the great places to live in the blue states that are sanctuaries? So, boom roasted is what I say to the liberals.
Well, the idea of sending the illegals, especially from Texas, I mean, we're both familiar with that one, but when Governor Abbott was sending them there, the whole point is like, listen, you guys voted for sanctuary status. Here's your illegals. And because Texas isn't asking for them, and it's really easy if you're, an uptown Chicago liberalite living in the 22nd floor of the Sears Tower, right? In your tech job, that you don't really give two craps about homelessness and illegal aliens because your life isn't affected by it. You leave on the weekends to Wisconsin to go to your lake house and play tennis and your golf course and all the things, and and it makes you feel good when you can call yourself that lakeside liberal in Chicago. But when all of a sudden your building is being overrun by illegal aliens and your schools are being taken over, then all of a sudden it becomes real to you, like it is for all of those counties and cities along the border. Where we even visited in Arizona, where they're affected by it every day. And I think the San Francisco people probably said, hey, this is funny. Let's let them get a taste of our homeless problem and let's send them to Texas, or, which I would do too. I think it's pretty smart of Gavin Newsom. And I do actually like the name of the project. I think somebody came up with the Journey Home program. I think it's kind of a clever little name. But to your point, where's home? If home's back in El Salvador, then maybe how are we going to get them back to El Salvador? Let's bring up one more thing that I had for you, and I do kind of want to talk about online gambling, because I do believe it's a very interesting topic, and I actually want to dive into this a little bit more in a future episode, and I think it would be interesting to see how online gambling has affected the state budget in Oregon, because we have such a large presence with our online gambling here, and obviously all the Powerball and the lottery and the whole 9 yards, and now you can basically bet on like anything. You can bet. Do you know that there's like odds on, you can bet on who's going to win the president and stuff? Like you can bet on that now. You can bet on who's going to win this Senate race in Montana. So it's only a matter of time. And this is what I think we need for Oregon Lottery, is we need odds on who's going to win our state house and Senate seats. Wouldn't that be awesome if we could bet on we could have like a breakdown on who's going to run and win in these House and Senate seats, and then we can have odds in the whole 9 yards, and we could be betting on it. I think that'd be awesome, Reagan. I think we should do that.
Brian, I refuse to participate, mostly because I know my money will belong to somebody else, 100%. I am not good at it. I play fantasy football, but I don't put money on it, and it's because I'm terrible at it. And I would, again, be terrible at this. I have seen the betting sites where you can pick the presidential folks, and every time I've thought about it, sometimes I'll write down, like, here's what I would have done, and then I go back and I would have put money on Biden staying in the presidential race. I would have lost that money. I would have put money on anybody but Trump a couple years ago. I would have lost that money. Brian, I would already be more hurting for money than I already am. And this is how these things make money. I'm reading this article from Slow Boring called "Online Sports Betting Hurts Consumers." There was a study done in 30 states, and every state that legalized this online gambling, it's mostly sports gambling for the state legalized betting. Brian, there are a lot of other people out there that are bad at it, just like I am. Average credit scores drop by 1%. States with online betting, the likelihood of filing for bankruptcy increases by 25% after 4 years. Collections on unpaid debts increase 8%, and young men in low-income counties experience higher financial distress. And I think primarily sports gambling is a male-dominated thing. I don't know a lot of women who gamble on sports.
Reagan, I don't know one.
So I just think overall it's not a positive thing, because you look at the in-app purchases on phones and how that as an industry has skyrocketed, and subscriptions and all of these apps that are charging instead of one time, they're charging recurring because you forget to cancel them, all that stuff. This is all the sports betting stuff is very similar to that, in the sense that because it's on your smartphone and it's so easy to do, it's going to have a lot more consequences than having to go to a casino and place your bets, and while on your drive to the casino, think about, is this really a good idea? Do I really want to take my down payment for my house and blow it on, betting that Tom Brady will come back to the NFL next year?
Yeah, I mean, to take the other side of it, I mean, is betting on a football game any worse than buying a stock in, Dutch Bros? And I mean, isn't that a gamble that you're going to spend $30 of your hard-earned money and buy a stock in this company and in hopes that it goes up because they sell, sugary drinks and caffeinated drinks to probably poor kids. I would say more in the younger female persuasion, but I don't know. I mean, I definitely can see the difference is that I'm investing in a company in hopes that that company goes up versus I'm betting on red or black, right? I mean, to your point, like, it's definitely the odds are against gambling versus buying stocks over the long haul. So there's a reason why Vegas is Vegas and it's so great, and they can have, all these artists and bands and all these sort of things, because guess what? You lose. They win, you lose. And I don't know why people haven't figured that out, that the house always wins. So to your point, I definitely agree that if you're going to Vegas, like, it was kind of all stuck in the Vegas sphere for decades, right? So you'd save up and you go, okay, hey, I'm going to take $1,000 with me, and that's what I can lose gambling in Vegas when I'm going to go for 3 or 4 days with the buddies and all the stuff. And you set up shop down there and you play blackjack or you gamble or do all the thing. But now it's gone into your everyday life where you can gamble literally every day on everything that you can think of. And that's definitely, because it can be addictive at the end of the day. It's just another addiction. The problem is there's dire consequences to gambling every day, and that's what I think this article really got at it and followed. I mean, it followed, like, what was it, 230,000 households in 30 states. And I think the reality is most people know that if you're a chronic gambler and you're probably, again, a young male, chances are you're not going to win and, all of a sudden be the one guy that made it and he's a billionaire because he's the best gambler on the planet. Like, the reality is those people don't exist.
Right. And I think also we'll cover this in a future episode. I think there's some guests that we could have on. There's a big fight in Oregon and some of the other states right now about tribes having more than one casino in Oregon and having them outside their reservations. That's going to be a really big fight. And I think if they win or if they expand on that, they're going to cut into a lot of the lottery video gambling that happens at a lot of restaurants and bars and stuff like that. And that's going to impact state revenue. And that's why the state is trying to avoid having to do battle with this. But at the same time, the reservation, let me say that again, the Native Americans, the tribes, they really want the opportunity to expand because they've been landlocked in, not the world's best deal, I'm going to say, on some of that stuff probably. And I'd love to have Justin Martin on the program. He was quoted in the New York Times like a month ago on this big expose they did about this battle. And I mean, the whole gambling space and gambling public policy is just fascinating stuff. So we'll try to get him on the program.
Yeah, Justin would be great. I think we could easily have him come on and talk about it, because I think what you're hitting on, which I think is fair, to say is the expansion of gambling, and mobile gambling, right? Like internet gambling and everything on your phone. Isn't it kind of unfair to the tribes that they aren't allowed to do any expansion? That seems like, why not just like let it be open to anybody? Why does the state get to control the gambling industry in Oregon, except within these tribal territories? And I think that is not necessarily fair. And of course, then what all that does is it makes the tribes fight each other, right? Because they say, well, we want to open up a casino, and they all want to open it up closer to Portland. At the end of the day, right, they want to be closer to some population center, because that population center is ultimately what drives, their dollars that come in the door. And so if Illahee I think it's Illahee, right, that's north of Portland, like they got to open up there in Washington, and now it's 20 minutes closer than going out to a different casino. So now that casino now makes more money, and I don't necessarily think that that's fair, because you're creating fighting amongst the tribes, amongst themselves, and the one person gets to control, the governor gets to control if a tribe gets to have another casino or not. I don't know. It doesn't really sound fair to me.
Well, and what's interesting about this, there's one casino that they're fighting over that the governor does make the final decision on. There's one that's going to get decided through a different process by the Secretary of Interior. And so that's the one that could actually really blow stuff up. So it'll be interesting to watch. Well, Bryan, you know what doesn't cost any money? Subscribing to Crosstabs on your favorite podcast platform. It also doesn't cost you any money to leave us a 5-star review. Reach out to us first if you're going to leave a 4-star review. We want a chance to persuade you. If you're going to do any less than that, you should probably stop listening to the podcast. I'm just going to be honest. We're not going to get a lot better. You should visit crosstabs.studio. We're improving, Bryan, but we're not going to improve that much. We're kind of are what we are.
Speak for yourself.
Bryan is reading the self-help books, it sounds like. You can read his self-help exploits on his Twitter account at Bryan G. Iverson. I'm at Reagan Canope. You can follow at CrosstabsFM. I forgot to tweet out the last couple episodes, so I'll have to get caught up on that for everybody. It was a good show, Bryan. We're fighting through some technical difficulties, but I think we covered what the people want to hear. We need more listener feedback, though, Bryan. That's what I like, the listener feedback. We need more of it. You can email. This is one I haven't told people before. You can email hello@crosstabs.studio, and you can find us via email. You can find Bryan and I. I was going to say slide into our DMs, but I'm not sure that that's right.
Yeah, don't
send us an email.
Mine. You can go ahead.
I don't
reach out to Reagan.
Look what I've done, Bryan. Gosh dang it. All right. Thanks, everybody.